All right, so now we're moving on to the second part of this chapter, and that is going to all be about factorization or factorizing or factoring. Remember, we broke this chapter up into two sections. The first part where we were doing expansion or distribution or multiplying, and then the second part of it is going to be where we're factoring or factorization. All right, so the first section is going to be section B, and it's going to be revision of factorization. So all the things we're doing today or doing on this video, you should have done at some point before. And remember, there's always going to be essential questions that I want you guys to focus on. The essential questions I want you to focus on now is how can we write an expression in two ways to help us understand it better? All right, so how can we write an expression in two ways to help us understand it better? And then the second essential question I want you to focus on is how are expansion and factoring related? All right, so let's go ahead and just start going into some problems. Before we do, let's go ahead and do one more expansion. So if we were given x plus 4 times x plus 3, remember, we would then distribute the x into both, so that would give us x squared. X times 3 will give us plus 3x. 4 times x will give us plus 4x. And 4 times 3 will give us plus 12. We then would combine our like terms of 4x and 3x. And our final answer for this will be x squared plus 7x plus 12. The reason why this is important to do is because factorization is a process of writing an expression as a product of its factors. So what we're going to actually do now is we will take this expression, this polynomial, this trinomial, and we are going to rewrite it as its two factors being multiplied. So we will be starting with this problem, x squared plus 7x plus 12, and then our final answer that we will get is x plus 4 times x plus 3. So whenever we do factor out, there's only one possible answer that we can get. We all can't get different solutions. When we factor, we will each get the exact same answer every single time. So we can't all of a sudden get different answers because we're factoring things differently. What we're doing is we're figuring out what do we multiply to get to this trinomial or to get to this expression. All right, so factoring is undoing the multiplication that we would have done, and we're trying to figure out what do we multiply to get to this term or to get to this expression. All right, so it's as if we're starting with x squared plus 7x plus 12, and then we'd be asking ourselves, well, what do we multiply to get to this? And then we would then factor and solve that it's x plus 4 times x plus 3. All right, so let's go ahead and start doing some problems. All right, so the way that the directions will be written for this is it will say fully factorize. All right, so we want to go ahead and factor this completely. So at times there will be multiple steps that we need to take. At times there may be only one. So we want to factor this as completely as we possibly can. So the first step when we're factoring is we're looking for our let me write in this way. We're looking for our GCF. And what this stands for is our greatest common factor. So first we will do, before we even start any of the other factoring that we're going to learn throughout this chapter, is the first thing we will do is we'll look and see, are there any common factors between our coefficients, so between our numbers, and is there any variable that's present in all of our terms? So if we look here, it's clear that right away that there is an x in both of our terms. So I know that since each of these have an x and our lowest power of our x's is this x to the first, that means the common factor that I know that they're guaranteed to share is just this x. And then I'll go ahead and look at their numbers. Well, 6 and 4. Well, each of these I know has a factor of 2. So since both of these have a factor of 2, I can remove that 2 from them as well. So my GCF is 2x. And then what we can do is we're seeing what is left over from this binomial after we take out this 2x. So what we can do is just divide each of these terms by 2x. And 6 divided by 2 is 3. So I know that there will be 3 left. X squared divided by x is just x, so it's 3x. 4 divided by 2 is 2. And the x's here cancel each other out, so there's no x left over. So this fully factored out is 2x times 3x plus 2. And if you want to check your work, you can go ahead and distribute your answer back in. And 2x times 3x gives me 6x squared. 2x times 2 gives me plus 4x. And as long as if you get your first answer that you started with or the question you started with, you know that you factor this out completely correct. All right, so the directions for this one will be the same exact thing, that we are going to fully factorize. And just like we did for the last one, remember the first thing that we're always going to look for, and it's very important that you do, is your GCF. So the last one we had, it was 6x squared plus 4x, where we know that each of these were divisible by 2 and each of these had a factor of x. So we were able to say, well, that's 2x. Well, if we look here, it's written a little bit different for us this time, but it's -4 times a plus 1 plus, so this means that this is considered to be one term and this is considered to be the other term because it's broken apart by this plus sign, and it's plus a plus 2 times a plus 1. Well, each of these has a factor of a plus 1 because both of these numbers are being multiplied by a plus 1. So this is something that's very, very important in the future for when we learn by factor by grouping. But here we see that each of these terms has a factor of a plus 1. So that means our GCF has to be a plus 1 because each of these terms is being multiplied by that a plus 1. And then we can divide each one by a plus 1 to see what's left over. And this a plus 1 will cancel out. This one will cancel out. So what's being left over is here we have -4. And then here we have plus a plus 2. But then just like any other math that we do, we will always have to simplify if we can. So this is then saying a plus 1 times -4 plus a plus 2. And since we have like terms of -4 plus 2, we had to combine our like terms. So then our final answer for this one will be a plus 1 times a, and then -4 plus 2 is a minus 2. So this, if we were to multiply this out and we were to multiply this out here, it would give us the exact same answer. So this is our factored form of -4 times a plus 1 plus a plus 2 times a plus 1. All right, so this is our final answer. That is it for this video. I'm going to break this section out into multiple videos.